Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is time for your Friday recap, and we have an extra special episode today. Today's episode is going to be in two parts. First, I have joining me on the podcast, Karen Ubel. She is a partner at Goodwin and Proctor, where she is co-chair of their blockchain and digital practice. And she was an attorney with the SEC for 6 years. So Karen is joining me here for the first half of the show to talk a bit about the SEC Coinbase situation. We'll get into Binance a little bit there too, mostly focused on Coinbase though. And it's going to be a great conversation. After that, I'll be joined by Zeneca for our regularly scheduled program where Zeneca, Gavin Purcell, and myself will talk all things that have happened this week in the world of NFTs, crypto, the metaverse, et cetera, et cetera. Y'all know, I think one of the most powerful use cases for NFTs are loyalty programs, which is why I'm so excited about our latest partner, GALXE. That's GALXE. GALXE is a leading platform for building a Web3 community. It is a no-code, plug-and-play solution to create task-based campaigns and loyalty programs. With over 67 million users, GALXE has worked with folks like Optimism, Polygon, Arbitrum, and more than 2,100 other partners with reward-based loyalty programs of their own. And I'm especially excited to announce their latest product offering, GALXE Mintlist. Mintlist enables NFT projects to issue allow lists based on different user profiles. It's free to use, and projects can then take advantage of GALXE's other offerings, like Task and Quest, which incentivize audience growth and user retention in the long term. Go beyond the mint and keep using GALXE's infrastructure to reward users through on and off-chain actions. GALXE's goal is to help projects grow in an authentic way and help them retain their users and communities over the long haul. And as a user, you can start contributing to your favorite Web3 communities today, joining allow lists through Mintlist and earning rewards, NFTs, oats, tokens, and points. Go to galaxy.com right now, that's GALXE.com right now, or click the link in the show notes to get started. Your Web3 community is waiting. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OPENSEA, the world's leading NFT marketplace, built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OpenSea user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copy mint protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OpenSea, you use OpenSea, but did you know that OpenSea now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OpenSea. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OpenSea right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. Karen, welcome to Overpriced JPEGs.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So excited to have you here because I've just been consuming everything I can about this news because it's interesting and so incredibly relevant and feels very important to the future of my livelihood. But it is great to have somebody who really knows what they're talking about here to answer some of my burning questions. I would love to start with, well, I guess let's start here. We're going to talk mostly about Coinbase today, but would love to just get a sense of the slightly different allegations or enforcement actions that are being taken against Binance versus against Coinbase. Can you spell that out for us?
Sure. Yeah. Just quickly starting off with a little disclaimer that we have to do. But I'm a lawyer, but this is not legal advice for anyone, not your lawyer. And I'm also here just kind of representing myself, not Goodwin, not any of my partners, not any of my clients. So on that note, I think that, obviously it was, I actually think it wasn't that surprising to get these two things back to back, right? To, say a Monday and a Tuesday morning. I think that Gary Gensler, as chair of the SEC, has been consistent in his statements, if not his actual rulemakings, but certainly in his statements and now in his actions of saying all of these things are securities, and bringing some enforcement actions and filing some complaints on that basis. Difference here, Binance, was there are some negligence-based fraud claims. Coinbase is really more of just the, you violated the rules. Here are the rules that you violated. and please stop violating the rules. So a lot more there. Also, there's some more elements of the Binance complaint that are seeking some temporary restraining orders, and we'll see that kind of play out in the next couple of days, maybe weeks. I'm not sure of the timing, but where they're trying to kind of ascertain where the assets are, because one of their allegations in the complaint was that there was some mixing of assets.
Mishandling
so making sure where those assets are and preserving them for the benefit of U.S. Customers.
Is this complaint just against Binance, or is it Binance US as well? I think that's one of the pieces that confuses me a little bit.
The named defendants in the complaint are Binance.com, NCZ, and Binance US, which they're, I think, as they kind of describe in the complaint, BAM Trading and BAM Management are two of the entities that then run the Binance US platform.
Okay, so it is all of them. Got it. So you said it's not surprising necessarily to get these back to back. I think it is not surprising, certainly, that this has come. You and I were talking about Matt Levine earlier. It sounds like you read Matt. I love Matt's stuff, and he's been talking for a while. Like earlier this year, when this SEC came after one of a former Coinbase employee for insider trading, that should have been a harbinger of what was to come, because you can't accuse somebody of insider trading. You can only accuse somebody of insider trading securities. So that was already the implication there was, okay, this person was insider trading securities, which would mean that Coinbase was operating an illegal securities exchange. And so it's not exactly surprising that this has happened, but why now? Like, what does it mean that this happened today? Does it mean they've completed what they need to build a case for court, in their opinion?
Why now? That's a good question that I suppose only the SEC staff can answer. I think that two things on my mind. Number one, on Friday, the two House committees introduced the new market infrastructure bill that would create a new regulatory framework governed by the SEC and the CFTC. So basically kind of saying you're not doing your job very well. Here's how we think you should do it, and passing some new legislation that would result in new regulation and a new regulatory regime that's a shared regime of jurisdiction. So I suspect there's something in there where the SEC and Chair Gensler thought, hey, I don't need your help. I already have jurisdiction. Let me show you what my jurisdiction looks like, and let me show you how I'm going to take care of this. And I don't need you to help me on that, and establish a new framework. Again, it's a very different framework, because what the legislation has proposed is how do you launch new tokens in a compliant way. But Gensler is coming at this, years after many of these things have been launched, and going after the intermediaries. I think that's part of it. I think the other thing is, I think we know from Coinbase's kind of process of making things very public. They've been in there. They've been talking to the SEC. They've been trying to do a rulemaking. They have a request for a rulemaking, and we know that they had the Wells notice. You may know better than me when the timing of that was, but it was
a couple months ago. I think it was April. So I had tweeted when the SEC tweeted out their thing about Coinbase. I had kind of a triggered reaction to it, because I, from my perspective, feel like Coinbase has been trying so hard to get some sort of clarity. And so for the SEC to come in, and there was just such a smarmy tone to me in their tweet, and I felt kind of triggered, and I was like, what the heck? Like, they let this company go public. And I had people in my comments who were rightly pointing out that, look, letting a company go public does not mean that you're tacitly approving to everything they do. The SEC has the right to come back and say, we have issues with X, Y, or Z thing. Okay, I understand that now. I do feel like there's a difference between the SEC coming back and saying, hey, we're going to regulate you in this X, Y, or Z different way, or here's how you have to conform, and coming back literally with a lawsuit and regulation by enforcement. Does that feel like a difference to you? Like, do you agree that there's something particularly frustrating about, okay, you'll go public, but now we're going to sue you in 3 years or whatever time frame?
Well, I mean, that's one thing that's frustrating. There are many things that are frustrating, right? This industry has been around for a long time. Coinbase has been around for a long time. Coinbase has always focused on being a very compliant platform from day one. That was what how they differentiated themselves. So that's frustrating. On the Corp Fin, you went public process. people are right. So that I was in the division of corporation finance. I reviewed disclosures for, all different kinds of companies. And as a disclosure-based regime, you can go public so long as you have disclosed all of the risks that a buyer would need to know when they purchase your securities. And, Coinbase had a bunch of risk factors in there that said, that actually kind of said, Bitcoin and Ethereum are where we get the majority of our revenues. And so if some of these other assets are deemed to be securities, it's not that big of a deal for our revenues. So as for you, as paraphrasing obviously, but for you as an investor, it wouldn't necessarily be material. Now that was when they went public; they had fewer assets listed then. But at the end of the day, there are other things out there with cannabis, for example, or other things that the SEC has said. This kind of market is illegal under federal law. You cannot come and go through the SEC IPO process. We're not going to declare that effective. And so while the disclosure-based regime concept is correct, I still think that Coinbase has a real point here. Is if you thought that what we were doing was illegal, then certainly, there are places in history where you all have stepped in and said we are not going to take things like this public and let you use the public capital markets to raise money and sell common stock to retail investors. So I think that's an example too where I appreciate and I understand their frustration, because that is truly, they have stepped in before. If they thought this was an illegal business overall, they let it move forward by saying, yeah, there's some risks here.
That's really interesting. And then you have the added component of and you let us now build up this business, grow it out, expand without giving any clarity, all the resources we've poured into this, and now you want to come hit us with this. So you said Coinbase has distinguished itself by trying to be really compliant, which I definitely, again, my perspective, I agree with. But I also want to be wary of the fact that I'm in crypto. I'm listening to Coinbase. I'm in my own bubble of sorts. I've heard people say, Coinbase has pushed the line more than they want to maybe let on. An example being ApeCoin, which we all knew was not legal, quote unquote, for US residents. You had to use a VPN, et cetera, et cetera. Coinbase listed it pretty quickly. They've listed maybe higher risk, quote unquote, assets, even while they've rejected many of them. What do you make of that argument? Do you think Coinbase has also pushed the line here in ways that maybe they don't want to admit?
The SEC, since Gary Gensler, has been adamant that all of these things are securities. And so you could say that they've been pushing the line just like anybody in this industry has been pushing the boundaries, because we're getting all of these speeches and all of these things that say everything's a security, everything's a security. But at the end of the day, we have no guidance to say, everything is not a security, just frankly, period in the story. That you don't have to be bullish on crypto, I think, to kind of be in that camp. These things are not designed to be investments. The majority of them are designed to be used in a decentralized network to power a marketplace, to bring people together on a peer-to-peer basis. If we regulate those things as securities, this technology just simply cannot operate and it fails. And so, when you take a position like the SEC has taken, that everything is a security, you're really kind of you're putting us all in a place where we just inherently disagree, because they're not intended to be securities. That's not how they operate and how they function. And so it leaves the rest of us kind of reading the tea leaves as to what is and is not a security, notwithstanding this kind of marketing and publicity push that we're getting from the SEC.
The fairest case we could make in favor of the SEC is, well, they have been saying this now for a while, that all tokens are securities. And so to the extent that they have been saying that, arguably Coinbase has been pushing the line simply by virtue of continuing to operate. Yeah. But again, all the caveats we've given before.
I'll just say too that that's what makes this complaint not that interesting to read in some respects, because look, if these things are securities, then the SEC is probably right. But the problem is that that we don't think that they're securities,
right.
and even the ones that he's named and listed. I mean, those are some of the ones that I think that the majority of folks would say are certainly not securities, given their history and how they're used and the like. So I think that that's really the hard part of this.
Right. The fundamental premise, like there's just a very fundamental premise that we disagree on. We all agree with the outcome once that's resolved, right? If these are securities, clearly Coinbase is operating an illegal security exchange. And if they're not, they're not. So let's talk about this and in terms of what happens next and then the security piece a little bit. So it's actually announced that there's a Judge Reardon who I think has already been pulled for this case. So it feels like this is moving quickly. What are the next steps? Like what can we expect over the next 6 to 12 months here?
So I think it'll be a motion to dismiss process, and again, for the litigators out there that are actually professionals of this that are listening, please excuse me. I am a corporate lawyer.
Putting her on the spot.
It's wrong. But generally, the next step I think is that they'll move to motions to dismiss. There's not going to be any discovery. I think technically
that's Coinbase trying to dismiss this lawsuit out of hand.
Yeah, out of hand.
And they'll be making the argument that these aren't securities, and this judge will hear those arguments and say, if she decides right away, you're right, these aren't securities, the whole case could be dismissed.
Right. Yeah. So basically saying even if all the facts that are alleged here are true, then it still doesn't constitute a case, a viable case, and therefore should be dismissed. So that would be technically, I think it's due August 7th. But query whether that's enough time, and that there may be some extensions that are agreed to, and then from there. I think you would, from what I understand, you would negotiate a briefing schedule, but ultimately none of that really progresses until there's a ruling on the motion to dismiss. I think we'll also see then following that motion for summary judgment. But again, that will be a long, long process. And I think, Coinbase has indicated that they are ready and willing to engage in that long, long process. So I think it'll be, as we've seen with Ripple, for example.
I was going to say, how long has the Ripple case been going on?
Yeah, so I suspect, and I think that's what, I think that's kind of how the markets in the industry have reacted, is that, we haven't, we saw some drops, but I think things have recovered. And
yeah, it didn't really react that much at all. It was like,
yeah,
$90 drop, and then it's back up.
And I think it also goes to the point of, while the complaint alleges that there should be more and better disclosures, I don't know that they're making, they're able to make a strong argument that people are being harmed here. They don't have the disclosure that they might want or need, but ultimately, Coinbase is operating for years and years, and so. There's not a lot of immediate harm that would cause a court to say, let's shut this down while this case is pending.
So is this is going to be a multi-year process?
I would expect that, yes. Unless
we won't have an answer for this until like 2025, 2026. It's going to be a long, drawn out, and who knows what's going to happen in the meantime. Is that fair?
That's my suspicion. Yes, that's what I would. It's dangerous to make predictions on anything, but that's what I would predict.
So let's talk for a minute here just about the security piece of this. People have heard this. This all hinges on this idea of the Howey test. There are 4 parts to the Howey test, right? Do I have that? It's an investment with an expectation of return, of profit of some sort. It's an investment in a common enterprise.
Common enterprise, yes.
The profit comes from the activity of others.
Look, you're definitely the crypto.
I'm missing the 4th one.
The expectation of profits from the efforts of others. So investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profits. Efforts of others.
So I understand how on the surface you look at those 4 things and you can go check to an extent, right? Like I can understand if you're at a high level view, you could say, yeah, it looks like that's what somebody is doing when they invest in a cryptocurrency. Talk about where the nuances come in and why you really feel like it's obviously not the case in the case of these cryptocurrencies.
Well, I think there's a lot of different elements of that. One thing is, a Howey test is a facts and circumstances test. The 33 Act is a test that applies to the offer and sale of securities. So it would have to be tested at every point in time that there is an offer and sale. So, the SEC in the 2019 staff guidance kind of put out this idea that something may be sold as a security at one point in time and later not sold as a security because the facts and circumstances have changed. And so I think that it's interesting in the complaint naming a couple of projects that have been around for a really long time. They even would say that they sold SAFs or they sold something else. And that was a security. They filed a Form D. The SEC notes that they filed a Form D. But the product itself, the token, is never a security. It's the offer and sale and the circumstances of the offer and sale. And so when you get to a point where you have a fully functioning network that tokens can be used in 7 different ways, number one. So that's your expectation of profits. If you're buying it to use it in a network, then you're not buying it with the primary expectation of profits. And it doesn't matter that somebody might buy it with expectation of profits, because there are a lot of collector's items out there, like purses, my personal favorite. There's a lot of collector items out there that there will never be securities, even though there's a whole market out there, a resale market of people that are buying this with expectation.
Taylor Swift concert tickets, baby.
Yes, exactly. So the next prong of it, though, is also decentralization, which I think is, I think that the recent SEC administration has been a little bit dismissive of, but that goes to that prong of efforts of others. So who are others? And if you can't say that others are and this is what Bill Hinman said in his speech, right? Is the success or failure of the project substantially dependent on an individual or an entity or group of individuals or entities? So kind of saying, is it still that core team that wrote the original code that is responsible for this being successful or failing? And for most projects, again, once your token is out in the world, for those that are really trying to focus on building something that utilizes the innovation of the decentralized network, the answer to that is no. It's not us. It's 25, 500, 300. I mean, it's all these different node operators. It's 1,000 different developers. I mean, that is, to me, those are the weak points, and that's why it's so fact specific, because it depends on the type of protocol. It depends on what they're building. It depends on how many people have actually integrated with what they've built, and and that's why. And honestly, in my view too, is that it's also facts and circumstances that evolves over time. And they've even made that point through the SEC that you assess that at the time of offer and sale. That is the time at which the 33 Act applies.
So there's a lot of really interesting things you said there. I think that first point is one that I actually am less familiar with. So but makes a ton of sense. You're saying, hey, the tokens that they've even specifically mentioned did say this was a security at launch, because at launch they were trying to bootstrap a network and people were buying in, hoping as an investment. But after
never the token. The token was never anything.
Okay.
The tokens didn't even exist. Right? There was an investment contract, because there was an offer and sale of something. We wrote it down on a piece of paper. Here's your contract. This is your investment contract. People filed Form Ds, etc. So yes, that people at that point in time, you were still substantially dependent on a particular company. And this goes back. I was one of the contributors to the SAFT white paper. And I still think that framework is actually what has really kind of guided our industry and kind of carried the day. But at that point in time, you are still dependent on the people that might be developing the code. But when the token is actually issued and launched and delivered, again, tokens are never securities. But at that point in time, the offer and sale, when that token is being offered and sold or distributed or airdropped now, whatever that might look like, at that point in time, now you can use it on in 17 different ways, and you can, et cetera. So,
and that's really important, because I have never ever bought stock to do anything other than hopefully make money. But I have bought Ethereum to buy a membership pass NFT that I wanted to get into a cool party. That right there feels like what you're saying is in some ways all you need to know to kind of argue against this securities language.
Right. And if Ethereum was a security and you wanted to buy an NFT to get into your, this party, there would be 1,000 different steps that you would have to take to buy your Ethereum, through your intermediary, through your registered broker dealer or whoever that might be. And then, whoever takes the money for the NFT now has to deal with, they're taking it as security. So, it's just, not to get into the weeds on it, but imagine you were trying to conduct that transaction and every piece of that puzzle was a securities transaction.
I mean, it's easy enough for me to buy stock on Robinhood, but I imagine there's a lot of back-end shenanigans, not shenanigans in a bad way, but there's a lot that has had to go into making that.
Yes, that's
true.
Right. Yeah.
So how optimistic are you, as we wrap up here, that this ends in crypto's favor?
I think that I think time is on the side of innovation, as these as more and more token projects really can demonstrate to Congress, to the world, to the U.S., to these regulators, whatever that may be, and then even and to a judge, right, when this actually comes to pass. Innovation continues to grow at an exponential pace in this world, and so I think it shows how silly this looks if these are all securities, and I think that that's why I remain pretty optimistic about it, because there are still great, amazing projects that are continuing to innovate. And when you have those examples and when you can show that in a court of law, I think it's going to be really hard to say, for a judge to say, yeah, these are securities, and shut this entire thing down. Maybe somebody has to pay a fine, but recognizing the fact there is an actual network of users and individuals out there that have built something, and why are we punishing them?
At this point, and I think this is how a number of people are feeling, I think including Coinbase, there's almost a sense of relief of like, finally. It feels like we've been in this state of limbo of like, what are we supposed to do? There's no clarity. Well, you know what? We're going to get clarity. It might take a number of years, but it's going to get litigated in the courts.
Yeah.
Not by Gary Gensler handing us down some regulation. And in some ways, that actually might be the better outcome in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good to get this to get the Coinbase complaint out, because they made it public, so we knew that it was coming and whatnot. And I think it's good to get that advice. But I guess my view is I don't know that anything has actually really changed, because this is the same drum that has been the SEC has been beating, and so I personally I think that we would be in a better place if it was not regulation by enforcement, because in the past, we've seen regulation by enforcement that kind of gives guidance on what is a security and what isn't. This is regulation by enforcement in the sense of trying to like shut down the operation of an industry. And that is, in my view, above and beyond and well beyond where an agency should be able to act. So I think that I don't know. I guess I would disagree that I don't think that I don't want to end up in a world where regulation by enforcement is what ultimately dictates this. And in particular here, regulation by enforcement could result in us being in a place where we just don't have exchanges that can operate in the way that crypto needs them to operate to be successful in the U.S.
In what's give an example?
The mechanisms through the speed and the volume at which crypto needs to trade, and the micro transactions and things like that. If you say that these things are all securities, Coinbase goes away and can't potentially operate in the manner that they would. Maybe they're trading 5 assets or whatever that might be. And then it also potentially puts into question, peer-to-peer transactions, having them operate at the speed and frequency and the volume that crypto needs.
But I guess my feeling is we've got a better chance in the courts for that not happening than if the SEC were just to come out and
it's true.
Decry it, right?
That's true. Well, I guess it just also depends on in my view, I don't think that the SEC has the jurisdiction that it thinks it has to come out with those rules. And I think that we see that by example in that, they have drafted new rules that are designed to reach DeFi platforms and DeFi protocols. And you could make the argument that if they had the jurisdiction and the authority that they needed already to reach DeFi, they wouldn't have to add it to a new rule, right? So I think that most people would say that this is outside their jurisdiction and that they're overreaching. So,
last couple of questions. Another piece of pushback I've heard against crypto is that they could register these things as securities right now. There's a tension between do existing securities laws realistically accommodate for crypto such that all of these cryptocurrencies could register and could be legally securities and they could just follow the existing rules? Or fundamentally, do these rules need to be rewritten to accommodate crypto? And you think, is that the ideal? Is the ideal here that we have some level of regulation? Like, obviously, there should be more transparency in terms of there's been so many scammy operators who've been able to hide in the dark in crypto. So would that be your ideal, that we do have a set of rules and regulations by which these things are governed? They're just fully adapted from the rules we have now.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think most of my clients, if you told them you got to provide a little bit of disclosure about, the management team or things like that, they would happily do that for the benefit of regulatory clarity. Now, the challenge right now is that the rules are not set up to work for a decentralized entity. It works back in that early stage where there is, a kind of a group of people or one entity that's responsible kind of for shepherding the project forward. But eventually these things become decentralized, and the securities laws are set up for a world in which there is an issuer that provides disclosure and provides, current event reports, right, on your Form 8K. And when you are in a world where it's a decentralized protocol, it could be 100 other people that know what that current event is that affects price, not the issuer, the so-called issuer, right? And so I think that there needs to be, some more customized disclosure regimes for a crypto project. And I think most importantly, though, there also needs to be an off-ramp. And I think that's the biggest part, is that, provide disclosure at the period of time where it makes sense for that issuer and that entity to be able to provide the disclosure that an investor needs in these assets. But at some point in time, recognize they're no longer the ones that should be held liable and responsible for that disclosure, because there's 100 or 300 or 1,000 developers that are contributing to a decentralized ecosystem. So I think that's what also is missing right now from the framework. From what I understand, for example, the two entities that used the Reg A framework a few years back, they're also there's no off-ramp for them. They are still technically, having to file reports with the SEC, for example.
There were a number of cryptocurrencies that were called out by name by Gary, and as part of this complaint, Ethereum was not one of them. Is there a path here where Ethereum and Bitcoin are the two that are essentially spared, even though we know Gary has said historically all cryptocurrencies except for Bitcoin are securities? But is there a world where Bitcoin and Ethereum are sort of separated out, and it's basically everything else that gets hit?
There could be that world. I think with Ethereum in particular, they're just hedging their bets, right? Because I think they are worried that if Ethereum, if they say out loud that Ethereum is not a security, then there's a lot that flows from that you could kind of take by analogy. And this is just them kind of continuing to hedge their bets and take very conservative public positions. But I think it's generally accepted within the industry, and I think that we had guidance back in 2018 that Ethereum was not a security. I suppose if you go back to my earlier comments, that things can, it's at the time of the offer and sale, and whether things, could, go from being a security to a non-security to a security with respect to the mechanism and the way that it's offered and sold. So I think that's what Gensler was trying to allude to in connection with the flip over to proof of stake, that the facts and circumstances have changed. But I think that's a tough argument.
It's staking securitizes a network. There's so much
I know. Yes,
demonstrable use and utility for why it functions this way, that to suggest suddenly now I guess this is, I keep saying last question.
Does it make it more like a security instead of less? I would argue that it makes it less like a security.
Totally.
Talking about, yeah.
Is this a power grab? How do you I think about what is happening here? Is this a cover your ass scenario because the SEC feels like it has been embarrassed in the wake of FTX? Do you think this is a good faith, we genuinely believe these are harming the public and we genuinely believe these are securities? Or is there something political here, what I would call political, in the sense that this is either a power grab or a cover your ass kind of a move?
Is all of the above an answer? But
yeah.
But I think there is a little bit of a CYA effort. just because there is so much money that is now tied up in this, although the amount of money still kind of pales in compared to the public capital markets, and even private capital markets. But I think, I think there's a lot in play here, and I think the challenge is that retail investors, everyday people, have lost money, right? And so there's certainly a feeling that something should be done to protect those individuals. My view, however, is that it doesn't need to be the securities regulator that is the one that steps in to protect individuals. There are a number of other agencies. There are another of law enforcement agencies. I mean, and frankly, with the Wahi insider trading, the DOJ first brought their complaint and filed their criminal charges there because they can actually prove and charge insider trading without having to prove that it's a security. So the point here is that there are mechanisms for investor protection and market monitoring and things like that. It doesn't have to be the SEC calling everything a security to then achieve some form of everyday protection for people that may be coming into this space without a lot of knowledge and understanding of what they're actually buying.
It sounds like you think there should be maybe an amalgam of other agencies that are like the DOJ and maybe others, or is there one in particular you're like, I think that this should be regulated or enforced?
Oh, it's definitely an amalgam. It's federal and state, and but if you make a false claim on a product that you're selling, you can be prosecuted for that. You can be sued for that. So if you make a claim that I'm going to develop a token that does X, and you don't achieve that, and there are other mechanisms to kind of go against the issuer of that token, for example. So I think I think that the market infrastructure bill does an interesting job. That they do actually grant that jurisdiction and authority to the SEC, but I think that they're doing it in a way that contemplates a more customized disclosure and also contemplates an off-ramp when those things become regulated by the CFTC. And the CFTC would be a great regulator in some respects because, again, they have anti-fraud and anti-manipulation authority over the spot markets. So they'd be able to watch out for those very things that are, potentially putting everyday people's money at risk.
What do you think about, meme coins, shit coins, where it really does feel like a speculative? It's solely speculative. You have like individual actors just hopping on Twitter saying, "Hey, buy my shit coin," and it does start to feel a lot more like it doesn't pass a Howey test. Where do you fall there?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Hard to speak to any specifics, but I think the name maybe speaks for itself. Does
that mean like play at your own risk? You're gambling at that point. We allow people to gamble, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, but that's not the system that we're that our laws are based upon, which is like play at your own risk. But at this point, yeah, I mean, right, if the only thing you have is a couple of tweets telling you that something is really great and exciting, and it's obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but
play at your own risk.
Yeah, play at your own risk, I would say.
Karen, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. This was super helpful. Would love to have you back as we continue to track this trial and see what comes out of it.
I suspect there will be more to come. I think Gensler likes a big splash, and this is a big splash, but I don't know if it's big enough. We'll see.
Hopefully it goes out with a whimper, starts big, ends with a whimper. Yeah. All right, Karen, thanks so much. Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about, Web3Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities community's token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. Y'all know I love Ledger, the world leader in critical digital asset security. When you own crypto, what you actually own is a private key that gives you access to your coins. It is imperative that you keep this key safe, and Ledger wallets are the best way to do that. The Nano S Plus and Nano X Ledger wallets, paired with the Ledger Live app, give you the best way to start your crypto journey while maintaining full control over your digital assets. Send and sign your NFT transactions with full transparency in the Ledger Live app. What you see is what you sign. And y'all have heard me talk about Ledger Stacks before. Well, due to unprecedented demand, Ledger has received all the Ledger Stacks pre-orders that it can fulfill through summer 2023. And so they have decided to pause the pre-orders. Ledger is incredibly grateful for the community's support and is working hard to get current pre-orders out and ready to ship so that they can make even more Ledger Stacks to keep your digital assets secure. Sign up for the Ledger Stacks waitlist and be the first to know when Ledger Stacks are available again for pre-orders. But don't leave your digital assets susceptible to breach or hack in the meantime. Order your Nano S Plus or Nano X today by visiting shop.ledger.com or clicking the link in the show notes. Okay. We're back, folks.
Sorry.
I just had a lovely conversation with Karen Ubel, who's an attorney at Goodwin, a partner at Goodwin & Procter, which is a law firm. She specializes in the blockchain, but she also worked at the SEC for 6 years. So I feel like I really loved getting her perspective. I was saying this to y'all before we started recording. What I really want to do, I think, is have like an hour long plus, like do a full interview, maybe with Karen. She mentioned she has a litigator on her team that would be good to bring in and do a panel along the lines of what I had done back when there was a lot of conversation about CC0. I had this panel of lawyers talk about IP rights and really walk us through that. And people loved that episode. And I want to do something like that when it comes to securities laws, because the problem with doing these like 30-minute interviews is it's not just the high hits, because it's more in depth than that, which is what I want. But then you don't feel like you really have the time to fully expansively dig into everything.
Right.
So it ends up being this like midway point, which is what I felt like that interview was. I think it was great. And I think people will really get some stuff out of it. But like, I almost wanted to go deeper, so I think we should set that up. And but otherwise, what are y'all's reaction to the Coinbase Binance news? I have a one hot take, and then we'll move on.
I mean, to me, it's like the gloves are off again. It's like one hit after another. It's like the U.S. government is just like, all right, now. I feel like I said this many times over the last year, but it's like game is really on now, and yeah, it's very clear the stance of the U.S. government against crypto, I think.
I think two things in my mind. One, it's good that finally there's going to be some sort of actual action here, right? Because I think we've been waiting for this for a long time. It's been in a waiting game. I know people were worried that it was just going to sit on the sidelines and like just kind of like fester. And I think this is better. I actually think weirdly, this is a good thing for the crypto industry, I think, in general. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm not somebody that purports to be somebody who like has done all the deep dive, but I think you need to have this conversation in order to make it like legit. And honestly, I think it sounds like, at least from Carly, from what you were saying, is that the argument that the crypto side has is pretty strong, right? And I think this is something that's important for people to know.
Yeah, I'm feeling quite optimistic about it. I mean, Karen's certainly a pro blockchain person, so I always want to bear that in mind. But like, the case here is quite strong. I won't relitigate it right here because folks will have just listened to us talk about it a bit. But I'm cautiously optimistic, to be sure. I will say that the biggest kick I get out of this whole thing is just, we talked mostly about Coinbase in my conversation with Karen, mostly because that's where she wanted to focus. She also wanted to not talk about any specifics. Like, I tend to like to go like, well, let's use Solana as an example, but she has clients in this space. And so she wanted to keep it more general, which I totally understand. So we didn't go specific on anything, except for we talked a little bit about Ethereum and Bitcoins specifically. But the thing that just kills me is like Coinbase versus Binance in terms of their two approaches, where you have Coinbase just trying to do the most to just like, how can we comply? They like created their own kind of regulatory governing body thing, not an official regulatory body, of course, but they created this thing to like rank crypto assets based on their risk and like just the absolute most. And then you literally have Binance being like, we're running a fucking illegal securities exchange, bro. Wait, what?
CZ trading 4.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, and just like you literally have a leaked thing being like, bro, we're running a fucking illegal securities exchange in the US.
Oh my god.
The word bro, man, it's like crypto and the word bro at some point need just to break up, I feel like. Let's just break away from bro.
No, please keep, it's so funny. That is so funny. Like, keep it. Because when it's strategically used like that, it just like makes the point. Like that sentence without the word bro isn't funny. With the word bro is just, you can't write this stuff. You can't write it. It's so good.
That's hilarious.
Will be interesting to see where it plays out. But let's move on because we will have just talked about that. We've just talked about that for the last 40 minutes. Vibes in general, NFT vibes seem like kind of okay.
Better than they had been, that's for sure. I feel like we're seeing some volume, which is pretty amazing. Like, funny when I go to Blur, I go to OpenSea, like when you look at the charts that like show you what's moving, like for 3 or 4 weeks, it was like, it was just like no circles. You know what I mean? It was like no circles at all. And like, I'm seeing circles, so that's a good thing.
Let's go. Well, there was one story in particular that I know Zeneca and I haven't been like deeply tracking that you are quite into, Gavin. I don't even know how to say it. Is Sproto Gremlin? Is that what this project is?
So let's start with this. So, okay, just a disclosure, I own a couple of these and I bought a few just because I find this so weird. But yes, there's a
Gavin
new
is
project.
pumping his bags, folks.
Yes.
Bear in mind.
Once again, this is what all I came on this podcast for.
Or not.
Yeah.
I don't, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, and Zeneca is too. So hold on, we'll talk about this. Okay, so Sproto Gremlins are, neither of you had heard about them, but they're something that came around the last couple of weeks. So this is a fascinating project for me, and the reason I bought into it is because it's so weird, and I just love weird stuff in general in NFTs, and I kind of am a big believer that like the weirder the NFT, the better in some ways, which does not do well for my bags in general, but this time has been okay. Okay, so Sproto Gremlins are an NFT project that is from the team that made the meme token. Okay, I want to make sure I get this right. I think it's Harry Potter Sonic Obama Inu. So and by the way, to be
honest, I'm kind of bummed I didn't buy that one. That is a lot of things that I like.
Okay, a couple things about this token. The actual token name is Bitcoin. So when you go to try to buy it, it's Bitcoin, which is great. I think the guys who do this, there was, I think, something that I don't know this for sure because I didn't see it, but supposedly when they first launched this token, they showed the devs smoking crack, which is, one crazy thing. That's an unusual thing to see when you do this, but they have earned their memes. Their meme stuff is incredible, right? If the videos they made on YouTube, I remember I bought it originally, the token, because they have a YouTube channel and the memes that they've made, the videos they've made are really good. Like they are deep internet people and really interesting. Zeneca, how did you find it originally?
I bought it. I bought it, I don't know, like a few weeks ago or a month ago, back when like meme coins were a thing and everything's going crazy. Because like every single tweet I posted or I replied to or I saw, there they were and with a great meme. And I was like, great name.
Yeah,
funny name, great ticker. I'm just gonna throw some. It was that point where you just like put a little bit of money in a bun, you throw darts at a dartboard, and I thought all my meme coins are gone to zero. So yeah, but
I'm bummed I didn't see it because I also love that name. Also, do you guys remember when like it was like the crack smoking mayor of Toronto or something? Do you remember when there was like a mayor in
Rob Ford?
Rob Ford, remember that?
Yes.
That's still crack to me. So it's like the crack smoking dev of Harry Potter, Sonic, Obama, Inu, like, henceforth known as.
Okay, so Sproto Gremlins are their NFT project, and this is the funny thing, Zen, so you probably didn't know this, but I didn't either. You could mint these with the token, and they minted very cheaply. They were like, point, I think 0.1 or 0.2 in the beginning and they're now at a 0.75, which is pretty crazy. But the interesting about this is they are one of the weirdest, strangest, some would say ugliest NFTs you'll ever see. You should Google these right now. Sproto Gremlins. I find them very weird and charming. They are clearly AI art. They are clearly all one of ones, but the crypto Twitter has like kind of taken them up and kind of like bought into them. So like each one has its own kind of thing, and you're seeing people buy them based entirely on weird traits. Like one of the ones I got is like a single eye with like a long neck.
Are they blue, red, and yellow?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't
blue, red,
like
and
these.
yellow. Yeah.
These look insane.
Yes.
Not what I was expecting.
They look cheap to me, to be honest. Like at least goblins were weird, but I love them because
this is part of the meme dynamic of this all, right? Like one of the things that people are saying, complaints about them is that, they look like simple AI art, which they probably are. They also are fairly low res, but like this all buys into this weird idea of
I
what
just hate
this
the colors.
team created. I know,
I like the Goblin Town colors. They're like kind of like
everyone has a reaction to it, which I think in some ways is a key to a good NFT project, right?
So I just found a great one.
God damn, I hate these.
So it looks to me like a cross between Sonic, The Simpsons, and something. Pepe.
Some sort of... Oh, yeah, a little bit, right? It's a little bit. So
yeah.
Anyway, I think what's fascinating about this, and again, just gets me excited about the NFT space is I love when weird stuff like this suddenly comes out of nowhere. I mean, I bought them at like 0.3, so I didn't buy them at like nothing. And I don't own I own 3 of them. But like to me, it's like this is kind of what makes NFTs special is stories like this, for me at least. For some people, like it's like this idea, you definitely, and I believe in NFTs as an overall thing, but like this is the thing you only see in NFTs, right? You do not see this anywhere else. And like, I love that there's a cultural movement, even if it's a tiny one, that starts around something like this. Now, of course, we're going to probably find out terrible things about this team, which does happen, and then I'll have different feelings. But for right now, I really appreciate how dumb and weird these things are. So to me, that makes me feel good that something like this is moving. It's like something weird and strange and makes me feel kind of like semi-magical in this space in a way.
Can I just say, we used to be like an honorable show that talked about blue chip projects and Louis Vuitton, and then Gavin joined, and it's just been shit coins and Sproto Gremlins ever since.
Anyway,
no,
so that made me feel
it.
good. That made me feel good.
Well, the truth is, when you have things like this happening, that's usually a sign that there's life in the market.
Yes,
and look, like we're like, oh, it was down, it's up. Nakamigos was not that long ago. What were the other things? Owl Askies were happening a few months ago, right? So like, it's not as if it's been totally dead and now this stuff is happening. It's just wavy, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it's up and down. But when these things pop up, it's nice because it shows you that there's some life in the market, and like, we're not dead yet,
Yes,
what's
exactly.
that line from whatever what was
that from?
That's
what
from
is that?
I'm not dead yet. Oh, you will be in a moment. You would know this, Gavin. This is like your comedy
The
world.
Harry Potter?
Oh my shut your face. It's bring out your dead.
Oh,
Monty Python.
Sorry.
Good Lord, folks.
Yes.
I mean, Zeneca, you don't have an excuse either. You've lived in Europe.
I was busy looking at the Harry Potter Obama chart.
Are you selling? Are you selling your?
What's it at right now?
It is at 2 cents, 2.2 cents.
That's pretty good. What's the market cap on it?
Market cap 22 million.
Yeah,
so
so
Pepe hit $1 billion. So this can still 50x. This is why my bags always go to zero, because I'm like, well, it could just go up again. It could just go up. A 20x isn't good enough. This is why we're just sick in the head.
Honestly, Zen, you posted something that really made me think, and I think I actually saw your tweet about poker and about how to have a system, and I think that's one thing that people really need to be aware of when you're trading in this market, because you need to know when to like get out of things, because if you don't, and I am the perfect example of this, 95% of your stuff will go to zero. And I don't, again, there are 5% bets that we talk about all the time here that I believe very strongly in, but the 95% of the other stuff, like if you are trading, you have to have a system or else you're gonna get screwed, I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about what else is good in the market. Azuki's has stuff going on. We actually just wrote a post about this for OPJ Pro. The Azuki's Vegas Follow the Rabbit event is coming up later this month. Lots of speculation. We here at OPJ are of the belief that a new collection is coming. I think, Zagabond has historically said that beans are more like the Bored Ape Kennel Club of their ecosystem, which of course perks up the ear to say, is there a mutant ape collection at some point coming if you're going to make those analogs? So I'm putting my money on there might be and I'm not literally putting my money on because I can't afford a 17 ETH Azuki, but I'm putting my money, my theoretical money on the idea that the mutant apes of the Azuki world are coming and will be announced during the Follow the Rabbit event. What do you guys think?
I think so. I mean, I think like there's a lot of hints up to June 23rd being the date, and if they weren't based in the US, I would say maybe a token, a coin, like they're riding this.
Right.
I could see them just doing something on ordinals as well. I could see them doing that, but I think most likely is what you're saying is like the mutants of the Azuki ecosystem is coming.
And rabbits. Do we think they're going to be a rabbit? They're going to be rabbits?
I mean, that could be fun. Why not? You never know.
There's no big popular rabbit collection out there.
There's not a big popular rabbit collection.
Fluff World's a rabbit, isn't it?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
there
of
is.
course.
Yeah, Fluff World's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but it.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say the rabbit thing. I mean, like it's the year of the rabbit. Obviously, like there's a lot in like Chinese zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this anime project, so obviously it has like very strong Asian influences. You have Zagabond wearing a jade mahjong, like he's been wearing rabbits on like a back of his coat at public events. They've been retweeting rabbit things.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's called Follow the Rabbit. I mean, in and of itself, I don't know, or they're totally head faking us. But
well, there's also a thought that maybe there's some sort of like dark Azuki project that has been a rumor that's out in the past. It hasn't come back for a while, so maybe there's like when you think about following the rabbit, it's like going through a rabbit hole to Wonderland or some sort of flipped world. So maybe that's something. I just think this is going back to the 5% of projects that are worth paying attention to. Like we've talked about Azuki a ton. Obviously, Zagabond has had his past, issues. We've talked about that too. But clearly, this is a business they're building. They're trying to do something interesting, and they are as good as almost anybody at this weird drip, drip, drip of information that comes out. And like, my big question is going to be, okay, is the market ready for a mutant ape type drop, right? Because mutant apes, if you remember, were like 10K for free to ape holders and then a paid mint for the other 10K. Like, I'm just curious to know, like, if all the liquidity gets sucked into the second collection, or are beans going to go down? Like the other question is like, beans right now have been kind of seen as the second collection. And if you hold beans, you're like, but if they are the kennel club of Azukis, just from a pure standpoint of like numbers, you might think, okay, well, they might dip then if there's this collection that's going to come up that's like more important than it. But I don't know. I'm excited. Again, it's going to be a big bellwether for whether the space is kind of quote back or not, right? Because I think if it works, and this is all to say if there is a mint, right? Or if there is a big drop. Because I think if it works, I think the summer's going to be pretty psyched. I also know some people who kind of think that like June is going to be a solid month, but then they're a little worried about what July and August look like. That June, there might have been people buying stuff already in this month, and then like in anticipation of the Azuki drop, and then who might like fold out. Sure. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Azuki, the price for Azuki will fall after this event, no doubt, because it's by the rumor, sell the news, right? Yeah. Like especially if you get airdropped. If there's some sort of airdrop or claim that you can have as an Azuki holder, which again, you have Dingaling trading some Azuki rares for like 25 like more baseline Azukis, which seems to be making a bet on, okay, if I have floors, I'll if I have any Azuki, I'm going to be able to claim a new one. So like some of the big whales in this space are clearly making that bet. And we all know what's going to happen. Once you have the claim, once you have the drop, the price will fall because that's being priced in right now to its 17 ETH floor. It's popped quite a bit too. So it's expensive. I'm excited in any case. Let's get a massive blue chippy project doing something big. I'm laughing, Gavin, thinking about, we put this in the newsletter recently, but we do this like top 10 ranking list, and one of our council members had been like, Azuki, what was the quote? It was like, Azuki, like Yuga, is one of the only projects that has maintained its floor simply by not shooting off its own genitals or something. Like basically just being like, all these other projects just like screw themselves, and like Azuki has like maintained prominence simply by just not like fucking up terribly, basically. So hopefully they maintain that streak.
I hope so too. I mean, listen, I think that the one thing I know about Azuki is I was holding, I don't hold an Azuki anymore, but I was holding when the beans dropped. And everybody was like, buy the rumor, sell the news. And then eventually it did drop a little bit, but then it went back up because of what the event was like, right? Because of what the event. Now, obviously, this is a different time. This was in, March of 2022.
March of last year,
which is like full-blown bull market. But
and Beans, I think, that was a surprise airdrop, right?
Yes.
It was just like, check your wallets. Yes. People weren't expecting it, so it wasn't priced in as much as this probably is.
That's true. That's 100% true. And I think, again, who knows what's going to happen with this? There's, it could just end up being like, again, in our newsletter, it could end up just being a clothing line, which would go over like gangbusters, I'm sure.
Yeah, that would be disappointing at this point. All right, the other project that I want to talk about here is DGod's Dust Labs announced or teased this thing called DID. I'm like not entirely clear what this is. I don't think we have all of the information yet. It's a platform it sounds like, and you authenticate that you are a DGods Utes holder. There's an integration with, or you connect your Twitter account, I guess, like, and the piece of this that's interesting is you authenticate you're a DGods Utes holder, you connect your Twitter account, and DGods and Utes will automatically follow you. And then if you ever sell, they'll unfollow you. So it's this,
great.
it's a classic Frank kind of move.
Awesome.
It's like this social pressure. It's that one more incentive to not sell.
Sure.
Yeah.
The other thing they've teased is that they're going to allow for an automatic, like, one-click follow all DGods and Utes holders.
Oh, fun.
So
That's
the other
really
thing
great.
is then everybody in the community will also be following you, and you can choose to follow.
That's all on Twitter?
That's all the follows all will happen through Twitter when you connect your Twitter account to this platform.
Wow, interesting.
It's so smart, and you have, in my opinion, and obviously Frank has now been saying for a while, like, they are a social club and they're trying to be like a cool Soho house, and like his perspective is what people have wanted with NFTs from day one, what they loved about Bored Ape Yacht Club from day one. They weren't asking for a game. What they wanted was the social connection. What they wanted was to be a part of this cool club. What they wanted was the party. And they are just leaning into that, which frankly, like, what is the thing that keeps you from selling an asset? Like, I feel really cool having this asset. All of my friends have this asset. If I leave, I leave the club. Like, it's the social pressure to stay in.
Yeah.
And like, this hits at the heart of that. Like, where by selling the asset, you're not just losing your PFP, you're losing 5,000 followers, you know, who are following you because of this. Like, it's so classic Frank, just hitting at the heart of like social behavior. I'm into it.
It's brilliant. I like it.
Yeah. I met a kid at VCon who he had dropped out of college, and he is in his 20s or early 20s. He dropped out of college, and he was like an early DGods guy and is like in that circle. And I just know that's the kind of person that loves this. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's fascinating. Like, Frank is so tied into like his audience, and like, this is exactly what those people, when I say those people, you know, DGods holders, I think really want to feel like part of something large. And weirdly, like, this is bigger than in some ways just NFTs, because like what Frank is doing and what NFTs can do is like really bring people together. And that's a hard thing in this environment in general, right? Like, it's very hard to bring people together online in a meaningful way. And like, honestly, I think this could be a remarkable example of what to do going forward with NFTs if you do it right.
Yep. I think it's really interesting. Totally agree. You mentioned VCons, so maybe we'll close a couple last tidbits here. VeeFriends trading cards. I think VeeFriends is a corporate sponsor of the National, which is the largest sports and trading card convention. So VeeFriends will have a big presence at the National, apparently, like a whole booth, and I think Gary's going to be there. And so they are trying to lean into this trading card thing. Folks may know they released packs of trading cards, like VeeFriends trading cards, sort of alongside VeeFriends Series 2. And you could like get packs of cards at like checkout when you like when you claimed your Series 2. I'm throwing back here. This was in like April of last year. In any case, I had a bunch of VeeFriends too. I ended up with a bunch of these cards, and so they get delivered, and they get delivered in these like big plastic containers. And so, of course, Zach, my fiance, is like, I had ordered all of the fucking books for book games. So I'd gotten like these massive boxes of just all these Gary Vee books. And then like a few months later, we just gotten the books out. And then we get these massive, you know, delivery of trading cards. He's like, what are you doing? But I still have tons of packs of trading cards.
Yeah.
So I am hoping that
It's like,
this is
how
some
long do you
sort
have
of
to keep these cards
catalyst.
for? Oh, just, 30, 40 years, and then it will be golden.
Well, I'll be passing them down to our children, Zach.
Yeah.
So, until we die, I guess we have these. He's like, oh my God, they're like collecting dust under our, like, he's like, we live in a New York City apartment. Like, where are we putting them? They're under our bar cart. But anyways, that's the route that it's a world that Gary knows very well. It's obviously a route that VeeFriends is taking. We've talked about this before. I think VeeFriends feels a little bit more scattered than some of these other, like comparing it to a Frank with DGods or to a Luca with like Pudgies. There's a real crispness there. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's about like later stage projects versus the early stage projects. I think a lot of the projects that launched early, whether it is a Doodles or a VeeFriends or even a Bored Apes, like they're a little bit, they've got their tentacles in a lot of things. Yeah. Whereas then you had the benefit of seeing all of that, and then a DGods or a Pudgies comes around and is like, okay, we're going to be very directed about what our vision is for this. Yeah. But anyway, it's kind of fun. If anybody's going to the National, go say hi to Gary.
By the way, have either of you ever seen card breaks. Do you know what that means? What card breaking is?
No.
So there's a whole media thing about breaking, which when you say a card break is basically when you're doing on camera, you're opening packs of cards.
I've watched a lot of those videos.
It's amazing how big that media scene is. And like, there's people that are I was in a Discord the other day watching my friends do this. People are putting like $1,000 to a site that is like opening these up. Basically, it's a handwritten sign that you write on this thing. They say, okay, there's 6 slots, and each person is buying a slot for what card is going to come up. And it's insane. So the business, all I'm saying here is the business of cards is much, much, much bigger than you may think. And I think that's a big part of it, right? It's become this very social media driven thing to like break these cards. Pokemon cards, obviously very big. And I think Gary, again, very smart, has been in the sports card world for a while, but like understands that there's a really big business and it's tied into media, which he knows really well as well, I think.
Yeah. The funny thing is like Gary obviously is very open about getting a start, like going to garage sales and buying like cheap items and then reselling them and being like, you can do it too. If you've got $20 in your pocket, you can turn it into $200. I'm just like, I do not have the energy to go figure out how to resell these fucking VeeFriend cards on eBay, or like, it really does take a lot of
Also, there's an
effort.
army of people that he's trained to do it now, right? That's the tricky thing.
Well, totally. I can't compete with these people.
Yeah.
I also have like all not rare cards, but I've got a bunch of packs I haven't opened. So those are the ones that I think I should sell, because then it's like, look, it's an unopened pack. I don't know what you're getting. Just like take them.
It's a speculation. Yeah.
Someday I'll get my shit together enough to try and sell them. Okay. Last piece of news, and then we'll wrap. Apple, of course, launched Apple Vision Pro. Gavin and I were on a call while the Apple, like whatever it was called. Was it WWDC?
WWDC, yeah. Dub they call it.
Was happening. And then we were just like waiting for them to announce Apple Vision Pro. Of course, we didn't know it was called that at the time. And then it comes on and Gavin's like, I'll call you back, and like hangs up to watch the like 15-minute presentation as if it's not going to be recorded and posted everywhere right after. I was like, no, that's good. Yeah, it's important that we watch this right now. No, I tease. So anyway, I mean, what are your guys' reactions?
Gavin, I'll let you go first.
Okay. I'm pretty impressed. I think it's after listening to a lot of people that have done hands-ons with it now, I've listened to quite a few. I think it's very early. Like, I think it's funny. We always talk about we're so early, but the fact that Apple's making an actual product and it's as good as it is feels like the step to something. And I've said this to, I think, both of you before, but I am a big believer that there is a space for NFTs in a world that is a wearable first world. And this has been teased honestly for 20 freaking years that this idea was going to happen. Like, it's been around since like the early Web 2 days that you're going to wear technology you're going to see. But if we get to a place, and we're not even close to it right now because the Apple Vision Pro is tethered, it's 2 hours of battery. It really is only being shown inside mostly. If we do get to a place where, 5 years down the road, you're wearing a relatively lightweight pair of goggles in the world, and you can see friends wearing shirts that have digital stuff on them, that's the promise of NFTs in a certain way. So I think that is a really compelling, interesting use case. The argument I would say is everybody's out there like, who's going to use this? Is like, it's Apple. People will use it. This is what happens with Apple products, and everybody has to remember that. So that's my thoughts. Then what about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, who's going to use it is when AirPods first came out, people were walking around with these things, and everyone was like, how ridiculous is it? And now, like, everywhere you go, everyone's got AirPods, and no one really thinks twice about it. It's just like, it's a normal part of what people do in society, and it's going to be the same with the future of, Apple Vision Pro. I think, this is the V1. It's not going to be amazing yet. It's going to be a bit clunky. TBD, how well it feels. I think it's not going to be like the Oculus is like painful after a while, half an hour. I think Apple will probably not ship something that is that uncomfortable to wear. Mm-hmm. But the 2 hour battery life is a big thing, but it will just get better and better and better. To me, it's like just the next step of. So I have this. I can't remember if I said it on the show, but I feel like we're at the end of the Homo sapien species, where like we're like not in a necessarily bad way, but we're literally watching our species evolve into the next thing in real time, where we're now part human, part machine. And it's like we're all already attached to our phones and devices, and this is just it's the next step. And it's like it's in the next, whether it's few decades or century or two, we just won't be. It'll be like a very, very small percentage of Homo sapiens in the world versus whatever the next thing is.
And this is why the aliens are here. This is why the aliens have come.
Oh yeah, can we talk about that? That's wild. what are those?
The aliens are here to warn us about the fact that we're turning into a different race and a homo superior or whatever that is. You know.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I'm honestly thrilled to hear that you think humans are still going to be around in 2 centuries, and that sounds incredibly optimistic to me.
It's almost like in zoos, right?
This is a big theory.
Will
so
be in
pessimistic.
zoos.
This is a big theory.
I don't know unless the planet explodes.
Oh, right.
Okay, well, we're going into a dark place. This is what happens when you start talking about Apple Vision Pro, and we end with like the end of Earth.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's interesting. Look, like I kind of agree with the like who's going to wear this in terms of this particular product, but I agree that it'll evolve because it's $3,500. I mean, you're going to have a set group of specific technologists who get jazzed about this kind of stuff who are going to buy it and enjoy it, but like it's expensive, and really it just feels like they pitching it as like a better way to watch Disney movies, which like cool, but like a little bit limited in terms of its applications. I did like seeing Iger up there. I was like, oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
A fun reminder of like the best IP company in the world and the best hardware, company in the world. The other big aha that I had, which other people probably had this far before I did, but is like, oh, what's great about Apple doing this as opposed to a Facebook or an Oculus is the familiarity we all have with Apple UX.
Yes.
And just being like, yes, like seeing the Apple interface, like seeing Apple Maps in the thing, like I'm just so conditioned for Apple interfaces and software that's a big advantage to me that they have over other companies, any other company.
One thing I just want to say, the word conditioned made me remember it. I don't know if you've seen, Sterling Crispin wrote this great Twitter thread. So he is an art blocks generative artist, also just a social experimenter, does a lot of great experimental art. And he mentioned that he worked on this device for 3.5 years on various parts of it. And the things he was saying, like he's under NDA for a lot, but there are some things that they filed patents for that he was able to talk about. And he's like, they're basically taking your biometrics and eye movements and predicting what you will do before you do it, and then changing your environment before you even know that you're going to do. And like that again gets us to the next race, control the end of the world. And
well, and then you think about
and they were careful about being like, it's going to stay private, like your eye movements will keep private, because like that
private
is where
you
very
well,
totally, that's the thing, like, do you believe it? I mean, that is where you start to get to like, oh my God.
I will say Apple's been pretty good about privacy, right? One thing to be aware of is that of all the companies, Apple's been pretty good about it, and they understand. Somebody had pointed out the fact, which I think is really interesting, is obviously the big negative around Apple has been this kind of like 30% hold on the App Store, right? And all the money they make. And what somebody said, which was really smart, is like, hey, look, Apple's launching a new platform which will be used by a lot of people. Guess what? This is their next 30% tax that's going to come. Like, because if this becomes the de facto device for everybody, everything's going to run through this again, and it's going to be the same thing. So I think that there's like, I think the big thing is
you're saying that's the negative.
Yeah,
you're saying that as like a negative.
That's a negative. Like the open
right.
sourceness of what you want the internet to be, what you want everything to feel like. I mean, also you notice Epic Games was not mentioned once, and Epic Games famously sued Apple for the App Store stuff. So like,
they're using Unity. They partner with Unity as opposed to Unreal.
Yes, exactly.
Unreal being Epic's game engine, and they made a whole show about how they're partnered with Unity, which is the biggest competing game engine to Unreal. Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, anyway, let's wrap it there because we've got a long episode today. Lots of good stuff happening though. Like it feels like the future is percolating, even as
more than percolating. The future is
flux.
Bubbling over. I don't know what to do. There's too much.
Future is here.
Yeah,
there's too much. Future is here. Future is now. Folks, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.